its right place, in its right place, in its right place, in its right place. Yesterday I woke up sucking on lemon. Yesterday I woke up sucking on lemon. Yesterday I woke up sucking on lemon. Yesterday I woke up sucking on lemon.
got something in my system. She said, why you gotta take it so far? Excuse me, I'm out of rhythm, taking pills and sleeping in a car. Can get back in. I'm freaking got something in my system. She said, why you gotta take it so far? Excuse me, I'm out of rhythm, taking pills and sleeping in a car. What's the use in being alone if I'm never home, I'm on the road? Can't reach me, I'm off the phone, 'cause I'm all alone, I'm not home. Got something in my system. She said, why you gotta take it so far? Excuse me, I'm out of rhythm, taking pills and sleeping in a car. You just can't be alone. Yeah, you've never been, I've always been. I just can't trust my bones, yeah.
I get sick just thinking back to all the damage you've done. I don't want to be your friend, your magician or loved one. Don't know if I should, but if I could, I would kick you right out of the car, kick you right out of the country. And if you got hate in your heart, forget me, forget me, forget me right now. As you leave, as you leave, as you leave our town. Forget me, forget me, forget me right now. Can it be, can it be, can it be so bad? I remember you hearing it out of my hand. You can be, you can be, you can be sad. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. To this day I'm having dreams of reuniting with you. It's the most annoying thing, I know I'm not supposed to. Don't know if I should, but if I could, I would throw you right out of my thoughts, kick you right out of the country. And if you got hate in your heart, forget me, forget me, forget me right now. As you leave, as you leave, as you leave our town. Forget me, forget me, forget me right now. Can it be, can it be, can it be so bad? I remember you hearing it out of my hand. You can be, you can be, you can be sad. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me.
So, I've been thinking more and more and more, and I really liked the discussions I was watching yesterday. So, I'm gonna play. This is probably not gonna be a long stream, not as long as yesterday's at least, just because I started so late. I've just been researching and studying things and draining my mind with philosophical stuff. But it's been really fruitful and reproductive. So yesterday we watched and sort of reviewed and kind of just did some light commentary on the discussion between Dr. David Wood and Jake the Muslim. I think his last name's Brancatella or something like that. And that topic is the Quran immoral? Today's topic that they're discussing is the Bible immoral? So now Mr. Wood is going to be put on the ropes to see how he does. Jake is just as angry though, so it's going to be pretty exciting, I think. I'm really looking forward to looking deep inside his nostrils. Maybe I'll gather some intelligence from his brain. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and play it while I go ahead and just get ready for my match. I'm not really going to take the game too seriously tonight. I'm just going to be looting and booting. Maybe trying to kill some people.
We're very excited for this debate. I'm going to
You're all
do
good,
a couple
Queen.
quick
Love you.
housekeeping notes, and then I'll share the format and do speaker introductions. So first, if you can, silence your phones just so there are no interruptions. And with that, the format for today's debate on Is the Bible Immoral? We'll have 20-minute openings followed by 12-minute rebuttals, then 8-minute rebuttals, and 5-minute closings, and 30 minutes of Q&A with the audience. And introducing first, taking the affirmative, Jake Brancatella, also known as Muslim Metaphysician, is a Muslim philosopher and online content creator known for discussing Islamic theology, philosophy, and arguments in favor of Islam. Please join me in welcoming Jake Brancatella. And on stage, Dr. David Wood is a Christian apologist, author, and YouTube content creator known for his critiques of Islam and his vigorous defense of Christianity. Please join me in welcoming Dr. David Wood. With that, I've got the timer set, gentlemen, and I will start the timer on your first word, Jake.
All right, I just want to make sure you can hear me fine.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, thanks for inviting me to this event. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it in person. Probably one of the worst experiences I've ever had in an airport or with airlines. But anyway, that's a topic for another time. So today's debate is the Bible immoral? I will argue that it is. Not that it contains nothing true, but that it commands, endorses, and attributes to God acts that are seriously immoral and evil. Let me name my standard at the outset because David will want to make the debate all about it. I am not judging the Bible by some modern yardstick. I'm judging it by a standard David himself already accepts, that everyone here should accept. That is, that it is wrong to torture the innocent for the guilty and wrong to slaughter innocent babies.
Ooh, this is going to be
in the
a
very
good
next
topic.
debate, I will defend the Quran from against David's attacks. So when David is tempted to change the subject to the Quran, remember, I have accepted that debate. It is next. It is not now. This debate is about the Bible, not the Quran. My case rests on one principle. A perfectly just and merciful God would never punish the innocent for the guilty and would never command grotesque, disproportionate cruelty. Yet the Bible attributes exactly these things to God in his own voice. I will show you that some of the greatest teachers of the church saw the same thing and fled from the text because of it. One boundary first. I am not objecting that the Bible describes terrible things. Of course it does. So does any honest history. My charge is about what it commands and praises as good, and above all, what God himself is said to order.
Let me know if the music's too loud.
I begin not at the edges of the book, but at its center. The core message of Christianity is that an innocent man was tortured to death to pay for the guilt of others, and that this supposedly satisfies the justice of God. Paul says God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of his blood. In fact, the book of Hebrews says that without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. So God needs a human blood sacrifice to forgive us. What kind of a merciful God is that? Is that really the epitome of justice? Picture a courtroom. A man stands guilty of murder, and the judge says, I am satisfied, because I have had this innocent man beaten to death in his place. The guilty may go free, but we would not call that judge just if he were to do this. We would call him evil. Punishing the innocent does not erase a wrong. It commits a second one. Guilt belongs to the one who earned it. It cannot be slid into another's account. And this is not merely a Muslim's objection. Here, Gregory of Nazianzus, not a skeptic, but a saint of the early church called the Theology, asking why Christ's blood was shed and to whom it could have been offered. He recoils at the idea that it was offered to satisfy the Father. And I quote, on what principle did the blood of his only begotten Son delight the Father? Who would not receive even Isaac when he was offered by his father, but changed his sacrifice, putting a ram in the place of the human victim? Close quote. Gregory cannot believe a good father would demand or delight in the blood of his innocent son. He finds it beneath God, and he is right. The Quran says it in a single line, no bearer of burdens shall bear the burden of another. That is justice. The cross, offered as a payment, is not. And one of Christianity's own greatest theologians felt it. David must explain to us how requiring that an innocent man be tortured to death for the sins of the guilty is not only moral, but it is the epitome of mercy and justice. If David fails to do so, then he has failed to defend one of the most central doctrines in Christianity. Now, from the heart of the faith to the hardest thing in the book, at least that I would argue for. The Bible does not merely permit violence. In places, God commands it against infants. In 1 Samuel 15, God orders Saul to strike the Amalekites, and I quote, kill both man and woman, infant and nursing child. In Numbers 31, Moses, angry that his soldiers spared the women, commands them, kill every male among the little ones and keep the little girls for yourselves. Let me be exact, because precision is everything. My objection is not that people die. It is not even that God, the author of life, may take it. That is a separate question. My objection is that God is depicted issuing a command to human soldiers to intentionally put babies to the sword as their mission. A soldier standing over an infant's crib with a blade to pierce his head or heart of the baby because he was told it is holy. That is not divine justice. It is the corruption of the man who obeys it. And I am not the first to find this unbearable. Consider Origen of Alexandria.
Dang, that was quick. No!
Alexandria, perhaps the greatest biblical scholar the early church produced. Origen taught that much of the Old Testament, read literally, is his phrase, unworthy of God. He could not accept that the slaughter of the Canaanites was meant literally, so he read it as allegory. The enemies were vices. Why would so brilliant a mind do such violence to the plain words of the text? Because he could not believe a good God had truly commanded genocide. This genocidal language is not merely an immoral command hidden in an ancient book. David Sheckel's Woodstein's idol, Benjamin Netanyahu, cited these same texts while justifying a genocide today by calling the Palestinians, not Hamas, Amalek. Take the most notorious verse in Psalm 137, which calls a man happy who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. Origen, Ambrose, and John Cassian all insisted the little ones are not children, but sinful thoughts to be dashed against Christ the rock. Yeah. They would sooner turn a call to murder babies into a metaphor than let it mean what it very clearly says. And Augustine, perhaps the greatest theologian of the West, gave the rule beneath all of it. Whenever a passage taken literally...
No. I'm not a master debater or theologian, but I think that psalm specifically is supposed to be somebody expressing real anger out of their heart. Like real anger. You know, when you say you really want someone to die, even their whole family, right? I mean, some people have said that. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that psalm's figurative. But I think the question tonight is going to be how much of the Bible is really figurative versus how much of it can be taken literally at face value. I personally try to take as much of it as face value as possible, and that gets really difficult with questions like this. So I'm curious what David's response is going to be.
Contradicts the love of God and neighbor, you must not take it literally. You must read it metaphorically. Sit with that admission. Augustine is conceding that the plain words of these passages are contrary to love, contrary to goodness. That is my whole case, spoken by a saint. He and I agree that the literal command is completely immoral. He chose to hide it behind allegory. I am only asking you to look at
It's kind of ironic. Me and the saints that I don't believe in agree, so my premise is true. It is good though. He's using our own saints against us. I think that's a good tactic. I wonder how it's going to hold.
Clearly says. David will argue that these commands from God are hyperbolic, and that some of the people these commands were called against are found later, which means not all of them were killed. However, this misses the entire point. Were innocent little baby boys commanded to be killed by God? Did God's army kill any innocent infants in response to this command? Of course. The fact that some survived is irrelevant. The fact that it was supposedly commanded by God and some were killed is enough to demonstrate the clear immorality in the Bible. David needs to explain how it is a good thing for God to command the killing of innocent babies and how it is good for humans to carry out this command. If he fails to do so, he will fail to defend his book. My third argument, Deuteronomy 22, gives a law about a man who seizes an unmarried woman and rapes her. And the remedy the law provides for her is that the man pays 50 shekels of silver to her father. She becomes his wife, and he may never divorce her as long as he lives. Read that again. A man is,
well, like we talked about last time, those laws were designed to protect the woman, and not in the sense of like staying with your abusive husband or rapist. In the sense of protecting the woman, because most of the time it was consensual, and if it wasn't consensual, then the woman was believed and the man was punished.
A woman is violated and raped, and the law's solution is to bind her for life to the man who did it, and to pay the price to her father, as though she were damaged property and he the injured party. And this is no modern reading by a skeptical Muslim. The oldest Greek translation of the Bible uses the same word for force here as it does for outright rape a few verses earlier. And Tertullian himself, the father of Latin Christianity, though he defended this law, described it as a case of, quote, violence to a damsel, a, quote, compulsory marriage contracted after violence, close quote. What do we have here? Force? Rape? So when my opponent, David, calls it mere seduction, he stands against the Hebrew, the Greek, and the early church's own reading. But suppose he insists on seduction anyway. Granted. Grant the gentler reading entirely. It does not save the law. Even then, a woman is forced into a permanent, unbreakable marriage with the man who took her virginity, and the payment goes to her father, not to her. Rape or seduction, she has no voice, no consent, no way out. She is property in a transaction between men, and no allegory will wash that clean. Where does the text ever say that the marriage requires her consent? It doesn't. In fact, it says exactly the opposite. So David must explain to us how forced marriages are perfectly moral. My opponent may be tempted to do what many Christians do, to wave these commands away as the harsh law of an Old Testament that the New Testament left behind. On his own theology, he cannot do this. David is a Trinitarian. He believes Jesus is fully God, the eternal Son, one in being with the Father, and therefore that Jesus is the God of the Old Testament, the very one who spoke to Moses. So, understand what that means. On my opponent's own doctrine, it was not some lesser God of the Old Testament who ordered Saul to kill the nursing infants of the Amalekites. It was Christ himself. The same Jesus he preaches as love made flesh is, by his own theology, the one who gave the command. He cannot sweep these commands away and move on. He worships their author. So the question is not whether the Old Testament is old. The question David cannot escape is this. When Jesus commanded the slaughter of those innocent babies, was it moral or was it immoral? We all expect a clear answer, David. Before I close, I want to read you my opponent's own words, because they tell you in advance exactly what defense you are about to hear, and why it fails. When a Muslim recently pressed David on stoning and then the death for blasphemy, here in substance is what he said. This is what David said, that if a pillar of cloud stood here working miracles and ordered death for blasphemy, I quote, David said, I have no problem with him putting us to death. It is clear that we are in rebellion against our Creator. I believe that God has the authority to give life and take life, close quote. His real problem, he said, is, quote, is not with God killing people or executing people. It is how do you know you're actually hearing from God, close quote. Notice three things. First, David has just told you he has no moral objection to religious killing, only a doubt that the other side speaks for God. So apparently, David has no problem at all with God commanding humans to kill babies. He will tell you God had the authority to give these commands, but authority and goodness are not the same. A power to take life is not a reason that taking it is good, as Gregory himself saw. Second, the hinge of the evening. Here is his justification. He has no problem when God executes those in rebellion against our Creator. Rebels, he says, the guilty. But remember, my case was never about the guilty adult. It was about the innocent babies in the cribs in 1 Samuel 15. What is the infant's rebellion? What did the baby in Numbers 31 do? Nothing. His whole defense that the condemned deserve it evaporates the instant the command is to kill innocent infants. It covers the blasphemy. It cannot touch the baby. And it was always the baby. The same is true of the cross. The one who suffers there is not the rebel, but the innocent. His defense is built for the guilty. My charge is about the innocent. They never meet. That is, unless David wants to argue that these babies were truly guilty and deserve to be stabbed to death, that would be even more shocking, but I don't know. He may actually claim that, as some other Christians have. Third, His real question, he says, is how do you know you're hearing from God? A fair question for another night. That is the Bible true? Our question is the Bible moral? And on that, he has admitted he has no answer but authority. So do not let this evening be switched from whether the book is good to whether it is true. I am not asking whether God exists or whether this book is his. I am asking whether what it commands is good or not. So, when he finally asks me, quote, by what standard do you call anything immoral? Here's my simple answer. I do not need a philosophy degree, although I have two, and neither do you, to know that stabbing a baby in the head with a sword is wrong. That knowledge is the common inheritance of every conscience, and it is the same standard the church itself used. When Augustine said a text contradicting love must not be read literally, he was measuring the words against the moral law and finding them wanting. I stand exactly where Gregory, Origen, and Augustine stood. I only refuse the allegory that let them look away, and I will not look away, and I hope that you won't either. Here is my case in one sentence. A perfectly just and merciful God would not torture the innocent for the guilty, would not command soldiers to slaughter babies, would not force a woman to marry the man who raped her, or force her to marry a man without her consent. Yet the Bible places every one of these in the mouth of God, and its own greatest teachers saw it and fled into allegory to escape it. I ask you, the audience, not to flee, but to look at the text as it stands, and to trust your conscience when you do. The question tonight is 4 words. Is the Bible immoral? On the evidence of its own pages, read very plainly as I just have, as even its own saints could not bear to read them, the answer is yes, and I invite you to ponder this. The last point that I want to drill home is at any time that David mentions the Quran or Islam or Muslims or Muslim society, this has absolutely nothing to do with this debate. Remember that we are debating 2 prompts today. The first one is the Bible immoral? The second one will be on the Quran. Is the Quran immoral? So anytime David tries to cast the attention on the Quran, Islam, Muslims, or how bad Malik supposedly is, or all of these people that we briefly heard about in the opening, none of that has anything to do with this debate. This debate is on, is the Bible immoral? So let's focus on that and see, is David going to justify killing and slaughtering by genocidal commands from his supposedly all-loving God, Jesus Christ, to kill babies in the crib?
I think I hear
Have faith on
somebody.
me.
Never mind, I think we're good.
Remember when Hamas was accused of that, killing babies in the crib? But yet, it is the very Bible that the genocidal government of Netanyahu appeals to. Those very same verses where he calls the Palestinians Amalek to justify the genocide today. So this is not some ancient book that is tucked away in somebody's library that is not being used today. Those very same genocidal verses are being used to justify the murder of innocent Palestinians. And notice that I'm not saying innocent Muslims. Yes, many of them are, but not all of them are Muslims. Some of them are Christian babies who are being murdered, and we see it in 4K. What is your excuse to deny that today? You have none. And we know where it comes from. That genocidal ideology is inherent within the biblical text. And I asked David to provide a defense of this if he dares, but I doubt he will be able to do so. Thank you very much for your careful attention.
Hey, appreciate that opening. I'm going to bring the board up to David.
On the move.
When playing games on PC, do you ever wonder if someone had a clip with you in it?
Download Metal, then go to Albums, Clips are in, and connect to any games you want clips for. And there you are.
I need to get YouTube Premium if I'm going to be doing this.
And this opening will be 10 minutes as well. And I'll start it only on your first word as well, David. Ready for you.
Put your names for trading and
thank you, Jake, for being one of the few Muslim debaters who doesn't back down from the dawah clowns who've been trying to derail debates like this. I have to point out, however, that in the age of the Islamic dilemma, when so many Christians and Muslims have learned what the Quran says about the previous scriptures, a Muslim attacking the Bible is extremely awkward, and it gives rise to a new dilemma. We all know the Islamic dilemma, but now we've got the Jake Brancatella dilemma. Jake wanted to debate the topic, is the Bible immoral? I accepted the challenge, so here we are. But there's a problem. According to Jake's religion, Islam, Jake's God revealed the scriptures contained in the Bible. Allah claims that he revealed the scriptures that Jake wants to prove are immoral. Guess what? There are only two possibilities here. Either Jake succeeds or he fails. If Jake succeeds in this debate, he will have successfully shown that, according to Islam, his God revealed immoral scriptures. So if Jake wins, Islam loses. But if Jake fails in this debate, then Jake just loses. This means that Jake actually chose a topic where the only two possibilities are his religion loses or he loses. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him. I can't emphasize enough how strange this is to me. Think about it. Most of us in this room, I'm assuming, are Christians. We're the people of the New Covenant. But because of the emphasis on loving others in the New Testament, we can find some of the commands of the Old Covenant disturbing. So why don't we attack and mock them when we find them disturbing? Why don't we just say they were corrupted? Because the scriptures of the New Covenant affirm that the scriptures of the Old Covenant are also from God. So instead of attacking and mocking them, we seek to understand and defend them. But here's where things get weird. The scriptures of Muslims also claim that the scriptures of the Old Covenant are from God. And yet, instead of seeking to understand and defend them, Muslims attack and mock them and say they've been corrupted. What is this religion? What is this religion where your God and your prophet give their stamp of approval to scriptures and you respond by attacking those scriptures that were affirmed by your God and your prophet? Welcome to the insanity of Islam. But again, most of us are Christians here, so we'll respect God and try to understand and defend what he's revealed. In my opening, we'll consider three things. First, we'll look at the big picture, what's going on in the Bible. Second, since we have to assume that the commands of the New Covenant, the final marching orders of the Bible, are what God was aiming at for the world, we'll see what those final marching orders include. And third, we'll try to get our minds around some of the troubling passages in the Bible, the kinds of passages Jake would call immoral, even though his God and prophet affirmed them. I think to get into specifics, it'll probably be in the rebuttal, but I'll give some introductory thoughts on some of these things. So what's the big picture? The opening chapter of the Bible declares that human beings are created in God's image. Genesis 1. Then God said,
I gotta use the bathroom real quick. I'm gonna be watching on my phone though.
After our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. What does it mean for men and women to be created in the image of God? It means a lot of things, but for the most basic meaning, think about the role of images in the ancient world. A king who ruled over an empire would have images of himself placed in cities across the empire as a reminder of his authority and dominion. When you saw the image of the king, it reminded you of the king. If you were to defile the image of the king, that would be considered an attack on the king. In the Bible, God says that human beings were created in his image. So human beings are supposed to be some kind of reflection of God. Now, all of creation is a kind of reflection of God's nature and attributes, but only human beings are said to be created in God's image. So there's something special about the way human beings reflect or image God. Imaging God is our most important function. We're supposed to make the invisible God visible. And there are several ways we can do this. God has authority and dominion over everything, but he gives human beings authority and dominion over the earth. We reflect God with our dominion over the earth. God is eternally a social being. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit have an eternal loving relationship. God creates man in his image. He creates man as a social being. The Bible says male and female, he created them. We reflect God in the loving relationships we have with other people who are created in God's image. The most important relationship we can have is a loving relationship with our Creator. Our love for God is a reflection of God's love for us. When our lives are properly oriented towards our Creator, we become like a mirror that's positioned so that when people look at us, they see a reflection of God. So we image God in our relationship with God, in our relationship with other human beings, and in our relationship with the natural world. That's our proper function. But notice, if you've been created, if you've been constructed so that you can image the Almighty, you need some pretty amazing abilities. In order to perform your proper function, you need the abilities that are required to do it. Think about an airplane. An airplane has a function, flying. When an airplane is functioning properly, it flies. But an airplane can only function properly if it has a certain structure. It needs the necessary parts arranged in the right way in order to perform its function.
I've been excited to receive this for a very long time. The book, the ultimate guide to rebuilding a civilization.
So just as an airplane performs its proper function when it flies, we perform our proper function when we have the right relationship with God, with our neighbor, and with nature. And just as an airplane can only function properly because it has a certain structure, we can only function properly because we have a certain structure, namely the various abilities and capacities given to us by God so that we can be
You
His
should have gotten
image.
AI to summarize this.
What kinds of abilities do human beings have that allow us to image God? Well, we have a constantly expanding control over nature. We have an aesthetic sense that gives rise to art and music. We use moral concepts to judge actions. We use logic and evidence to evaluate arguments. We understand mathematics and philosophy and history and science. We explore the world. We explore the universe. We explore the cells in our body. We're drawn to something spiritual. These abilities make us sound like some amazing creatures. We're so radically different from other creatures that we seem almost divine by comparison. The problem is that we take the abilities that are given to us to image God and we use them for evil. And because we have special abilities, we can do some special kinds of evil. We can do far worse things than any lower animal ever could. We can do so much evil that we seem almost demonic compared to other creatures. When human beings fall into sin and rebellion, we take the abilities that God gave us so that we can be His image, and we use them to insult God and to degrade His image, other human beings and ourselves. We take the abilities that were given to us to make the invisible God visible in our world, and we use them to try to keep God invisible in our world. We take something that was given to us for a supreme good and we use it for evil. It's like someone gives us money to open a homeless shelter, but we use it to start a human trafficking ring. So human beings are a kind of paradox. We're simultaneously something amazing and exalted and something horrible and depraved. We're not one or the other, we're both simultaneously. We're like an airplane that has crashed.
Airplane.
Even if you had never seen an airplane before and had no clue what it was, you could look at a crashed airplane and tell that it was made for some extraordinary purpose, even though it can't perform its function. But did the God who created us in His image leave us in our wretched state, or did He make a way to restore the proper functioning of His image? The Bible is a record of God creating human beings in His image, human beings falling into sin and rebellion, causing chaos and destruction, God dealing with fallen human beings, and then God restoring the proper functioning of human beings through the gospel. Jesus is the perfectly functioning image of God, the one who truly made God visible on earth. Jesus restores our relationship with God, and by looking to Jesus and imitating Jesus, empowered by the Spirit of God, we grow in our ability to image God until we're no longer the image of God simply in our ability, but also in function. That's the big picture of the Bible. Is that immoral? Jake thinks it's immoral. Now, suppose you read the entire Bible from beginning to end, and you ask yourself, how am I supposed to live now? How are you supposed to live? What are the final marching orders of the Bible? In Mark 12, one of the scribes asked Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? Jesus answers, the foremost is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. So the heart of morality, according to Jesus, is love. Love for God and love for others. We obey God because we love Him. We care for others because we love them. In the Gospels, Jesus tells us that our lives are to be characterized by gentleness, mercy, and peace. In Matthew 5:5, Jesus says, blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. In 5:7, He says, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. In 5:9, He says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Later in the same chapter, Jesus tells His followers to love even their enemies. He says to the crowd, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For He causes His sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And Jesus' teachings clearly influenced His early followers. You'll recall that Apostle Paul was the violent persecutor of Christians until he met the risen Lord Jesus Christ, who changed his life. What does Paul tell us? Let all that you do be done in love. Walk in love. May the Lord cause you to increase and abound in love for one another and for all people. See that no one repays another with evil for...
I think somebody's here. Maybe I was wrong. I swear I saw one of those little... It might have just been the light of a bot. No! I didn't mean to drop that.
On the move. 20 minutes remain.
I guess that's it. There's usually pretty decent loot here. Time to go.
For evil, but always seek after that which is good for one another and for all people. I urge that entreaties and prayers, petitions and thanksgivings be made on behalf of all men. And we find similar ideas in the rest of the New Testament. Pursue peace with all men, Hebrews 12:14. The wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without hypocrisy. And the seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. James 3:17-18. Honor all people, 1 Peter 2:17. The one who does not love does not know God, for God is love, 1 John 4:8. This is how we're supposed to live according to a full reading of the Bible. Is this immoral? Jake thinks it's immoral.
Still staying up late, gaming solo? With Hacko AI, get the ultimate companion for your playtime.
These ads are getting smart.
But the Bible isn't just a bunch of commands to love other people. It was a long and rocky road of God dealing with human beings hell-bent on degrading themselves and others. There are a few things we need to keep in mind, however, when we examine some of the hard sayings of the Bible in this debate. One, the violence in the Old Testament is disturbing because life in the ancient Near East was disturbing. Not a lot of jails or prisons to keep bad people away from your family. Not a lot of police officers, kind of hard to call 911. Extremely tribal, not much concern for anyone outside of your tribe. There were groups that would slaughter you just because they could. There was child sacrifice, bestiality, and tons of people who only responded to force. The reality of life in the ancient Near East played a significant role in God's revelations for that time. Two, the New Testament makes it clear that some of the laws in the Old Testament weren't ideal for all times, but were a kind of compromise due to human hard-heartedness. In other words, God understood human beings in their fallen state. He met them where they were at, and he made incremental changes to eventually bring them where they needed to be. Three, God gave the Mosaic law to the children of Israel after delivering them from bondage in Egypt. God didn't go to the Israelites during their captivity and tell them that if they faithfully obeyed his laws long enough, then he would rescue them from the Egyptians. Instead, he rescued them first and then gave them the law. This foreshadowed the gospel, but God demonstrates his own love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Romans 5:8. Four, the Mosaic law was accompanied by numerous miracles. God provided miracles before, during, and after his revelation of the law. Judgments on the Egyptians, the parting of the Red Sea, water pouring from a rock, manna falling from heaven, and so on. Even the pagan groups of the time knew about this miraculous confirmation. Disobeying a random guy who claims to speak for God, but who can offer no evidence, perhaps apart from his Arabic prose, is one thing. Disobeying the God who guides his people through the desert as a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud is something else entirely. If accountability is proportional to the evidence offered, Israelites who rebelled against God's commands were without excuse.
I'm gone.
5, God dwelled with the children of Israel. God was with them on their journey from Egypt. God said to Moses, "Then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them." So I will consecrate the tent of meeting and the altar, and will consecrate Aaron and his sons to serve me as priests. Then I will dwell among the Israelites to be their God. They will know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of Egypt so that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. And with the presence of God came extreme blessings and extreme accountability. Worship the Lord your God, and his blessing will be on your food and water. I will take away sickness from among you, and none will miscarry or be barren in your land. I will give you a full lifespan. God would protect them from enemies, protect them from illness, and give them full, long lives. The requirement was that they had to follow his laws. Some of the penalties for disobedience are quite harsh, but keep in mind they were living in the presence of God. So the penalty wasn't simply you broke this rule. It was the pillar of fire gave you a command, you agreed to follow the command, and then you openly rebelled against the God who appeared to you in a pillar of fire. Think about this. Suppose you're in a plane that's about to crash. God appears and miraculously saves you from the plane. He asks you if you'd like to enter an agreement with him. He's going to protect you from all harm for the rest of your life.
Okay.
In return, he tells you you're not allowed to wear orange shoes. That's it. That's all you're required to do. You take the deal, but a few days later you start thinking, you know, I really like orange shoes.
15 minutes
So I'm going to start wearing
signals.
orange shoes. Suppose he strikes you dead. People today would say, oh my goodness, God destroyed him just for wearing orange shoes. No, God will have destroyed you for knowingly rebelling against a command that was accompanied by a miracle. Big difference. But even among the harsh penalties of the Old Testament, we see God injecting some kingdom ideals into the ancient Near East. Leviticus 19:18 should sound familiar. God says, do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Love your neighbor. But later in the same chapter, we find something more startling. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Love foreigners because you were foreigners in Egypt, so you know what it feels like to be mistreated. Don't mistreat others. That's basically do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do not defile the land where you live and where I dwell, for I, the Lord, dwell among the Israelites. The context here is defiling the land by shedding blood. Shedding blood defiles the land where God will dwell. Those would be some introductory thoughts on some of the hard sayings of the Bible. Jake has brought up some specifics, and we'll get to those in the rebuttals.
Thank you very much for that opening as well.
Okay, so a lot of context. I wonder how he's going to set that up during the rebuttals, because I didn't really see, I didn't really see a solid rebuttal against the baby's part.
We'll switch into the 12-minute rebuttals. Reset the timer, and then Jake, we're ready on your first word.
All right, can you still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right, thanks for that opening presentation, David. I wish I could have been there in person because I can't really even see your face and your facial reactions. So I really would have enjoyed this. But anyway, you started off, which is quite shocking, but I guess not really, because David is a one-trick pony who absolutely adores and has a strange obsession with the Islamic dilemma. Now, people know that I'm certainly not scared to debate the Islamic dilemma. I've already debated David on that just a few months ago, and I just debated Michael Jones, his friend, on that, and several of his friends. So, not to say that this is not a debate topic that's interesting, that many people may be intrigued by, but that is not the topic of today's debate. So, trying to put me in the so-called Islamic dilemma, and even for the sake of argument, if we were to say that yes, everything that I portrayed as evil in the Old Testament, Islam affirms, which obviously I don't grant, that would not prove that the Bible is actually moral. So Dave, please don't waste my time and the audience's time by rehashing this Islamic dilemma debate. We've already had it. People can go watch it and make up their own mind what to make of it. Let's not waste people's time with this. Okay, moving forward from there, because you wasted about 4 or 5 minutes on that, David, I do appreciate a little bit of your honesty when you say that Christians, and presumably you as well, find some of the Old Testament commands, quote-unquote, disturbing. You believe that they're disturbing, but at the same time, you are actually defending them, in a sense, because at least you're being honest enough to not just say, oh, well, no, these are just from the Old Testament, although you kind of did that when you tried to portray Christ as the perfect image of God on earth, and he's coming with the final great law and all of that kind of stuff. What we need answers for, and which I don't think you really dealt with any of the specific passages that I mentioned, which you had to know I was going to bring these genocidal passages. I mean, come on. Any Christian apologist worth his weight in salt would have to know that I'm going to bring these passages up. So the fact that you didn't anticipate them and at least even attempt to respond to the slaughtering of infants and babies, and let's not forget about animal rights and the donkeys. I mean, my God, what did the donkeys have to do with it? But you didn't respond to that at all. You spent a lot of time talking about how human beings are created in the image of God and what that means and how we have special characteristics, and yet also because of that we have a special duty to God and the rest of creation. I agree with most of what you said there. But David, that only makes it 20 times worse. Why? Because those same image bearers of God, those babies in the crib, and remember, we're talking about ancient warfare. We're not talking about someone, you know, in a laboratory somewhere, or an IT guy just pushing a button and boom, a bomb goes off and you're sort of distant and removed from it. No, we're talking about ancient warfare where the so-called warriors who were commanded to kill infants would have to go into small dwellings and hear a baby crying and go up to the baby and actually stab it with a knife or a sword, or maybe smother it with a pillow.
A degree from Purdue Global gives you more than knowledge. It gives you the power to make a difference so that now I can be a lifter.
Is this really what we're trying to say is the epitome of God's mercy and justice? We need to get an answer from David, whether or not, because he spent a lot of time also talking about the evil, reprobate nature of human beings. I want to know, does David believe that the one-day-old baby, that a sword was put to his neck or his heart, was that baby guilty of sin? Was that baby evil?
Guilty of sin.
Was that baby immoral and therefore deserving to be put to death and face eternal hellfire? These are the questions that we need answers to, David. Not about this whole kind of theological position that you went into about how we're made in God's image and all about images. And for people who don't know, here's a little plug for you, Dave, and Modern Day Debate. There's an upcoming debate that David's going to have about images, and that's going to be with Jay Dyer. Now, I don't believe in the sort of Eastern Orthodox position on images, but I can assure you, David is going to get absolutely obliterated in that debate, much of the same way that he is here, because he doesn't really understand his own theology, his own religion, and that's come out very clear in his recent exchanges with other Christians. All he can do is try to poke and prod and attack Islam, but he can't defend Christianity in his own book, and tonight is a perfect example of just that. Now, he also spoke a lot about how different things have proper functioning, and he spent a lot of time about airplanes, and it was kind of disturbing to me because the past 24 hours, I've really had a difficult time with airplanes, and I know about them misfiring and not functioning properly. But nevertheless, David, none of that actually answers or deals with the problem. In fact, as I said, it's worse. But the fact that God created us in his own image, as you say, we have these special abilities. And you say that as a result of those special abilities, they also can be bent in such a bad way that they result in special evils. And I agree with that. Many human beings are evil. I mean, David, you're a perfect example of that. And we'll go more into detail on some.
I guess it's still Dookie on David time.
In the next debate. The question is, did the babies in the crib, in the manger, that were ordered to be slaughtered, were they evil? Were they immoral? Were they deserving of death or not? Now, you say that Jesus came and was a perfect functioning image of God on earth. You're trying to preach and, kind of give a good sermon, which for D. Wood, who's not very emotional, we know he is an admitted sociopath, right, or psychopath. He can't actually feel some of these genuine emotions half the time. So he did his best and tried to give you an emotional sermon of why we should love the Bible and love Jesus and love your neighbor. But again, as I said, that only makes things worse. Now, David, when he was bringing these things up, he said, oh, Jake, these are the things that Jake says are evil. Well, Dave, you did a really bad job anticipating my arguments, because everything that you claimed that I was going to say was evil, I'm not. I'm perfectly fine with the fact that God created us in his image and that we have special abilities. That's not what my argument was.
Excuse me.
About these things, about loving your neighbor being evil? No, I never made that claim. Pay attention to exactly what I said was evil and immoral, not what David claimed I said, right? And you mentioned this idea about love your neighbor as yourself. Well, guess what, Dave? Love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, I haven't gotten sleep in the past 24 hours, and I'm dumb, but I'm not that stupid. I think I'm recalling well enough that that command is also in the Old Testament. So when your all-loving God Jesus had that command in the Old Testament, how is it that that command to love your neighbor did not cover the innocent babies in the crib? How didn't it cover them? Apparently it didn't, and apparently ordering the slaughter of them is not inconsistent with loving your neighbor. Now, if that's what loving your neighbor is, then as the famous saying goes, there's no hate like Christian love. And we need to understand that, again, just appealing to the final law and this kind of picture that David tried to put on, which I call Care Bear Christianity, this kind of fake lovey-dovey thing. Let's just kind of snuggle together, you know, Care Bear Christianity. And the Bible says to honor all people. Dave, all you've done in splitting the Old and New Testament, you've made one of the most brilliant modern cases for the ancient Marcionite heresy that said that the God of the Old Testament was a different God than the New Testament. And that was a very early heresy because some Christians couldn't square these evil commands of God commanding the slaughter of innocent babies
No, I don't want that.
with the so-called loving God of Jesus appearing on earth in the New Testament. Now, Dave, you said several times that the Old Testament violence is disturbing. And I agree with you in many cases that it is. But why is it? I want people to think about this. Is it merely disturbing or is it evil? And why does it disturb you, David? Is it because you know and you have the moral intuitions that it is evil and wrong? Now, you said that the Old Testament was a compromise and incremental changes. Well, there's no incremental changes regarding the slaughter of innocent babies, Dave. Why couldn't God spare them? Were they evil? We need answers on this question. Couldn't he have let the babies go from the beginning, Dave? Couldn't they be adopted by the Israelites or someone else? Why would he order the slaughter of the innocent? Now, you made this excuse and you did the same thing in other debates with other Muslims, that God provided the Israelites with miracles, and the pagans witnessed them too, including the Amalekites. So what does that mean? Does that justify slaughtering a one-day-old baby? Miracles mean that God can order genocide and slaughtering babies? Not in my book, David. And speaking about my book, if I were there with you in person, I probably would have given you a free copy of my book, but we know by your own admission you don't really read much. You say that you don't really read anything over 100 or 200 pages nowadays. So I guess we didn't really miss anything out with that. Now, you said that, Christianity teaches not to seek a grudge. Then why were the babies slaughtered? And maybe you also should answer while you're at it about the rape in the Old Testament and the commanding of the rape victim to marry the rapist. Also, why a father can give his own daughter away. We need answers, David. We're all waiting. Thank you very much.
We'll switch over to David for his 12-minute rebuttal. And then, David, would you like to use the projector slides? You got it.
All right, well, Jake said that the Islamic dilemma is a waste of time. And then oddly enough, later on, he said that these commands are not okay in his book. Well, then why would his book affirm the book that contains these commands? This is very weird stuff. Just quick examples. He's pointed out this is not a debate on the Islamic dilemma, but he's completely misrepresenting things if he says our book doesn't affirm his book. Look at what Allah says to the Jews in Surah 2, verse 85. Do you then believe in part of the book and disbelieve in part? Talking about their book, their scripture. And what is the recompense of those who do so? Only believing in parts, which Jake said, oh yeah, parts of it are good, but you know, these other parts, they're definitely not from God. What is the recompense of those who do so? Believing in parts and not in all of it, but disgrace in the life of this world, and on the day of resurrection they shall be consigned to the most severe punishment. Allah says he will send you to hell for agreeing with Jake about the previous scriptures. 447. Allah says to the people of the book, O you unto whom the book has been given, believe in what we have sent down, confirming that which is with you. Those scriptures that you have. 543. Allah says about the Jews, why do they come to you for judgment, O Muhammad, when they have the Torah before them? The Torah is what they're supposed to judge by, the same Torah that Jake is condemning. 547. Christians are commanded to judge by the gospel. Let the people of the gospel judge by what Allah hath revealed therein. And says that we're rebels against him if we don't. 568. O people of the book, you have no ground to stand upon unless you stand fast by the Torah, which Jake condemns, the gospel, and all the revelation that has come to you from your Lord. 1094. Jake has to learn that even his own prophet could only...
There's somebody here for sure. Ooh, let me do that. That made noise. Go! Oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. Ah! Dang it.
Affirm his own scriptures if they line up with ours. Allah says to Muhammad, but if you are in doubt as to what we have revealed to you, ask those who read the book before you, talking about Jews and Christians. 241, and believe in that which I have sent down, confirming that which you have with you. This is talking to the children of Israel, is talking about the Old Testament scriptures. 289, confirming that which they had with them, again talking about the Jewish scriptures. 291, once again, believe in what Allah has sent down. They say, we believe in what was sent down to us, and they disbelieve in what is beyond it, though it is the truth, confirming what is with them, their scriptures. 297, confirming that which was there before. 350, and here you have Jesus saying, I come confirming that which was before me,
okay, I understand,
the Torah.
I understand.
So we know what the Torah said during the time of Jesus. According to the Quran, Jesus confirms the Torah that was there, and it's the same Torah that Jake is attacking, and he says it's really just not relevant. Interesting. All right, well, Jake brings up 1 Samuel 15, verse 3. Let's do a little background here.
This is what we're here
So this is the background. In Exodus, then the Lord said to Moses, write this as a memorial in a book, and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it, the Lord is my banner, saying, a hand upon the throne of the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. The Amalekites were people who would attack you for no reason. They would just come and attack you. And you see, up until the book of Samuel, that wherever anyone else was attacking them, the Amalekites would jump in. And so God says you're eventually going to deal with these guys. Now we get to this passage here, which Jake brought up. Here's the command. Now's when this is going to be fulfilled. Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. So that sounds pretty brutal, but let's keep reading. Jake's seems to think that when I'm talking about hyperbole or something like that, I'm just saying, well, some people survived. It's a much bigger issue than that, as we'll see. But notice here, just 2 verses later, it says, and Saul came to the city of Amalek and lay wait in the valley. What did Saul go and attack? The city of Amalek. Now, the Amalekites did not have cities in any sense resembling anything we would think of as a city. They had one fortress town.
Let's fact check. Did the Amalekites have cities, and was the city of Amalek a small place, or was it a large city with many people? City only primarily nomadic or semi-nomadic. The city was likely a regional tribal center, encampment, or a fortified outpost. Okay, rather than city. Okay, so that's true.
Which had 10 houses in it for the royal family. So if Saul went up and attacked the city of Amalek, he was going up and attacking this fortress, this small fortress with 10 houses in it. Well, let's keep reading. Then Samuel said, bring here to me Agag. So this is after Saul doesn't carry out the order because Saul keeps Agag alive. Then Samuel said, bring here to me Agag, the king of the Amalekites. And Agag came to him cheerfully. Agag said, surely the bitterness of death is past. And Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women. And Samuel hacked Agag to pieces before the Lord in Gilgal.
Dang.
Now, keep in mind the story. Saul completely exterminated all the Amalekites, complete genocide. And then Agag was the last one alive, and then Samuel decides to kill him. But you should notice something weird. There's still at least one Amalekite left, even in the passage where Agag's about to be killed. You see one?
Dang,
you
you're
see
fast.
A surviving Amalekite here? As your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women. So his mom's still alive. That's strange, because they've all been wiped out. And then, of course, later in the exact same book, we read, now David and his men went up and made raids against the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites. How are you raiding the Amalekites? You already wiped them all out. For these were the inhabitants of the land from of old, as far as Shur to the land of Egypt. Later on in the same book, now when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day, the Amalekites had made a raid against the Negev and against Ziklag. They had overcome Ziklag and burned it with fire and taken captive the women and all who were in it, both small and great. And then David has to go and rescue
Oh my
everyone.
goodness.
These Amalekites are doing pretty well for a group that's been completely genocided and wiped out. Maybe some random survivors? Remember, Agag was the last one standing officially. But what do we read later in the book of Esther? Haman plots against the Jews. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, and advanced him and set his throne above all the officials who were with him. Haman, the Agagite. He was a descendant of Agag, the last of the Amalekites. And yet his descendants, so his mom's still alive, his descendants are still around, there are Amalekites all over the place. What's going on if the entire population was wiped out? Well, I don't know, right? It's a puzzle. But there's two main possibilities as far as what would actually account for the evidence that we have. One is called hagiographic hyperbole. It's common in ancient Near East writings that you would describe military victories as complete exterminations of the population. As a matter of fact, you see this all over the place. You see this in the plagues of Egypt. Remember, you have the plague on the livestock, and it says, all the livestock in Egypt died. 2 plagues later, it says, bring in all your livestock from the hail, because if you don't, the hail will destroy your livestock. Wait a minute, what livestock? They're all dead. What's going on there? Well, this keeps happening over and over again. Until you get to passages like this. And so what's going on here? Some suggest that it is an example of hagiographic hyperbole, that kind of bragging rights back then. If you defeated someone militarily, you described it as complete extermination of the entire population. It's not just people from the ancient Near East did this like it was a sport. They even did it with Israel. Find writings, and we completely destroyed Israel. There was no one left. Wrong. They were still around. So that's one view. The other view is, since it says that Saul went up to the city of Amalek, which was just a small fortress for the royal family, some view it as this was a command to destroy the royal family. You're destroying the royal family. You're killing Agag and his offspring so that there's no one to rally around, and then the Amalekites have a chance to reform their ways without their current leadership, and of course then they end up doing the exact same thing. So the point is, this isn't actually an extermination of an entire population the entire way, which is why you still have Amalekites all over the place afterwards. He brings up Numbers 31.
That makes sense.
Well, this is interesting. All you have in Numbers 31 is God says, punish the Midianites for what they did. Then Moses actually carries out Moses decides the punishment, but notice what you have. So that's Numbers, a couple of books later. So keep in mind, according to the story, everyone's wiped out except the girls who weren't part of Balaam's plot.
Good night, Queen. I love you too.
And incorporated into
Have a good night.
Israel. Well, what do we read a couple books later? The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Midianites, what do you mean? They were completely wiped out. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, notice the Amalekites jump in, they have to. The Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep nor cattle nor donkeys. They came up with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count them or their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. That is very impressive for a group that had been completely wiped out. Just a little later, they come and completely overpower the Israelites. Jake brings up this passage from Psalms, happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. Well, that's not a command, and it had nothing to do with the Israelites. This is someone who's enraged. This is a psalmist who's enraged at the Keep in mind, the psalmists complain and rage against God sometimes as well. He's enraged against the Babylonians for what they did, namely dashing their kids against the rocks. And he said, happy is the one who does that to you. Well, that's got nothing to do with the Israelites. The Israelites didn't punish the Babylonians. It was the Persians who did that. And by the way, Jeremiah commands, this is actually a command from a prophet, he commanded the exiles to pray for the prosperity of their captors. Then we have Deuteronomy 22:22. where you have, actually, I think I'm about out of time. I got 30 seconds. I'll be quick. So Deuteronomy 22:22. If a man rapes a woman, then this guy's going to be the girl's going to be forced to marry her rapist. We got a little problem. Deuteronomy is second law. That's what Deuteronomy means. It's a retelling of the earlier revelations given to the children of Israel, and the word there is that he grasps or seizes her. Well, is it literal? He's grabbing her and raping her, or is it seizing her through seduction? Well, this is a retelling of Exodus 22, which says if a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price, and she shall be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he must still pay the bride price for virgins. So this is a man seduces a woman, then he has to marry her.
Time. With that, we'll kick it over to Jake for his 8-minute rebuttal. Give me 1 second, Jake. I'm just going to get the HDMI cord.
Oh my gosh.
All right, Jake, we're ready for you.
All right, you can hear me still?
Yes.
Good to go?
Yep.
All right, thanks. All right, Dave. Man, I thought you were going to do a little bit better than this, but really, I want the audience to pay attention. David cannot, and it's very clear, he cannot defend his immoral, evil Bible. Why do I say that? He keeps going back to the Islamic dilemma. As I said, even if, for the sake of argument, which I don't grant because I've debated David before on the same topic, even if the Islamic dilemma is successful, it does not prove that the Bible is moral. It would just prove, even if the Islamic dilemma is successful, that both the Quran and the Bible are immoral. So you have not defended your burden at all in this debate, David.
I have to agree with him a little bit.
You went through so many different verses, and I can respond to every single one of them, but that would really waste my time in responding to all of these different arguments that you want to bring regarding the Islamic dilemma. As I said, we've already had that debate. But David wants to spend much of his time talking about the Islamic dilemma rather than defending his Bible from claims of immorality because he knows that he can't. So every time he keeps wrenching this and refusing to actually respond to my very, very specific questions, I want you all to...
Leave me alone.
That,
wow, look at you. You're like a bird.
First Samuel, he gave
Leave me alone.
two hypotheses.
Leave me alone.
Right? He tried to give context. He said the Amalekites would attack people for no reason. Here's a question.
Was that an Amalekite?
One-day-old babies attack people for no reason? Were they guilty? Dave, you still haven't answered the fundamental question. What about the babies in the crib? Were they guilty? Were they evil? Were they immoral? Did they deserve to be put to death? And were they deserving of eternal hellfire? You have not even attempted to answer that question, or any of those questions. Now you say, oh, well, maybe it was hyperbole. And in, those ancient times and how even some times today, I'll give you the analogy. You say, oh yeah, didn't you see that game? They crushed them, dude. They completely obliterated them. This is hyperbolic language. We grant that. That doesn't solve the problem, because even if we grant that there is some aspect of hyperbolic nature regarding these commands, it doesn't solve the problem, because even one baby, even one infant who is innocent, unless you want to tell me he's guilty, Dave, are you scared to do that? Is that your belief? Or maybe you don't know, because just like everything else that you're supposed to defend, you don't know your own theology. You don't know what you believe. And you mentioned that actually later on when you said, well, what do we do about this? You said, I don't know. It's a puzzle. That's exactly right. It's a puzzle. And you're not able to crack this nut and solve it. So, Dave, let's grant you your hyperbolic command. Were any babies meant to be killed? Any at all? Are you going to convince us that God's command to kill babies, he didn't intend that any babies be put to death? And if you do, I'll show you in Numbers 31 how that can't fit what you're actually claiming. You mentioned about Saul and there not actually being a complete genocide, and there's people who come up in the stories later on and they're still alive, and their entire nations weren't wiped out even though they were supposedly commanded to be. Again, none of this solves the problem. You said, and you quoted, that the sword has made people childless. What does that prove, Davy boy?
Davy boy.
The Bible is saying and reaffirming that children were supposed to be put to death, and they were, and that's why people were made childless, because their children were killed. So, when God commanded it, Dave, did he really want the babies to be killed at all, or not? He just said it, and it was the category of babies was completely hyperbolic. The adults wasn't. Maybe a little bit, but he still wanted some of them to be killed. But the babies, he didn't want any to be killed, right? Guys, that's not what the book says. This is David doing eisegesis, inserting his own lies that are not actually represented in the text later on to try to make it seem like we can actually stomach these passages. Now, since you don't know, Dave, I'm going to help you out, but you also, you barely dealt with the rape victim thing. You claim that it's about seduction in Exodus 22. That's not actually true. The difference is that word there of being seduced is in the text of Exodus, and it's conspicuously absent from the Deuteronomy 22 text. In fact, all instances, fact check this, all instances where that word for a physical seizing, not a metaphorical seizing, when the object of that seizing or that action is a human being, it's always a literal physical action. It's not a metaphorical seduction of a guy sweet-talking a girl on a Friday night. That's not what we're talking about, Dave. And I said, even if I granted that to you, which you didn't respond to this part of the argument, it still is forcing a girl who was seduced by a man to marry him and to never divorce him. That doesn't mean that she consented to the marriage. She's forced. It's a forced marriage, Dave. I thought you were against forced marriages. Are you? Even if it was a seduction, she's still forced to marry the seducer. So we need to know if David favors these type of forced marriages or not. Now, with Numbers 31, probably the most important thing that completely destroys your attempted response, Dave, Numbers 31:13 says, and Moses, Eleazar, the priest, and all the leaders of the congregation went out to meet them outside the camp. But Moses was angry with the officers of the army. Why? The commanders of thousands and the commanders of hundreds who had come from the service in the war. And Moses said to them, have you spared all the women? Oh, wow, I thought this was just hyperbolic. But Moses is pissed off because they didn't actually kill all the women. This proves the intent of the command, and it proves the application. Behold, they caused the sons of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to be unfaithful to the Lord in the matter of Peor, so that the plague took place among the congregation of the Lord. Now, here's the command reiterated after the women are being left alive. Now, therefore, kill every male among the little ones. All the little baby boys, kill them. Just in case you were not clear about it, he repeats it. And kill every woman who has known a man intimately. However, all the little girls who have not known a man intimately, keep alive for yourselves. So, Dave, why was Moses so pissed that the women weren't killed if it wasn't supposed to be taken literally? And why does he say to kill all the little baby boys and keep the baby girls for themselves, but kill all of the women?
And
we're waiting for answers.
Time. With that, we'll kick it over to David for his. You got it. Plug back in, and then I've got the timer set for you, Dave. Davey boy.
Davey boy.
David Shekels Woodstein. All right, we're ready to go. And on your first word.
Well, Jake continues to attack scriptures that are the word of God according to his God and his prophets. This entire debate is basically Jake repeatedly slapping his God and prophet right in their faces, just doesn't seem to care. Jake says, well, he's debated the Islamic dilemma. Yeah, go watch those debates. It went really well. All right, but Jake said that, you know, even if I'm right about the Islamic dilemma and so on, that wouldn't prove that the Bible is moral. It would only prove that the Bible and the Quran are both immoral. Awesome. So we finally got some agreement that if Jake is right, the Quran and the Bible fall together as immoral. All right, that's progress. As far as the Amalekites, he says, what about the babies in the crib? I still don't think he's gotten this idea. If there is something called hagiographic hyperbole, and there definitely is. This is a common literary device in the ancient Near East. Jake brought up, you know, my team slaughtering your team and so on. This happened. I mean, we have it in a much dialed down sense. So it's like in the on TikTok, Dawa, every debate they say, you got baked. Oh, really? I got preheated in the oven to 425 degrees and stuck in the oven. You can imagine a culture 1,000 years from now that doesn't use any kind of hyperbole. Reading about these, TikTok debates and go, oh my goodness, you were debating and then you baked someone. Why would you do such a thing? How might they realize that some level of hyperbolic language is going on? Well, if then the person who was supposedly baked appears again a week later for another debate, you might start wondering, okay, what's going on here? We need to try and figure it out instead of thinking that people were actually baked. So Jake says, what about the babies in the crib? If it's hyperbolic, if it's a military victory over the Amalekites, which is described as the complete annihilation of the population, which definitely did not occur because the Amalekites started attacking very shortly afterwards. If that's the case, then what are you talking about? If people in the ancient world describe military victories and so on as complete exterminations of the population, how many babies were killed? The alternative, that this was about destroying the royal family, Jake, how many babies were there in the royal family at that time? I don't know. I don't know if there are actually any. And even here, you need some degree of hyperbolic language because Agag's descendants are still around later, and his mother was still around. So the point is, you've got some issues here. Jake points out that I said it's a puzzle. Yes, it's a puzzle as far as exactly what happened. You have some data. You have these commands to wipe out the population. Then it says it happened, and then the group's there later. His descendants are there later. His mother's still there. What's going on here? Well, you have several proposed solutions to this. The one thing that doesn't work and can't possibly be the case is that the Amalekites were completely wiped out, which is how it gets presented. It was complete genocide of the Amalekites. Well, that simply can't be the case. Jake misquoted the part where Samuel says, as your child has made women childless, as you have made women childless, so your mother shall be childless. This is Samuel talking to Agag. You, because of your violence, have made many women childless, so now your mother's going to be childless. So the mother's still around. Jake says, I'm using eisegesis. This is not me going, oh, I don't like that, that's mean. That's me reading the passage and going, wait a minute, if these guys are wiped out, why are they here later? If he was the last one standing, the last one in his family even, why is his mother still there? If the family's wiped out, why are his descendants still around and still coming after the Jews much later? What's going on here? That's not eisegesis, that's reading the text, that's exegesis. As far as
Zero with an X.
Zero loves making it easy to manage your books and cash flow all in one place.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed, as you may be, by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to join the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
No, thank you, John.
The rape victim, he says, yes, this means, so it means to grasp or to seize. I'm sorry, I just can't budge on this one. If Deuteronomy is the second telling of the law, and grasp, if you were just reading it, you would think it means literally, he grasps her and seizes her and takes her to bed. That's how you would read it. If you say this is the retelling of this earlier law, which specifically says that a man seduces her, all right, you can believe what you want. I can't make you go with the reading that it's retelling, but you can't make me ignore that when this is the retelling of the earlier law. Now, Jake brings up a point. Well, what about the woman having to marry and so on? Well, the dad doesn't have to. The dad doesn't have to. It says he doesn't have to. But if Jake wants to say, hey, this is forced marriage or something, I don't know what you do with this. If a girl has been in an illicit relationship in that time, you got a problem. And not many people are going to want to marry her if someone has taken advantage of her and she's been seduced and so on. So the father has the option to say, no, you seduced my daughter and they're going to be together. And if he doesn't want to, then you don't have to. As far as Numbers 31, he points out that Moses says, have you spared all the women? Yeah, that's exactly the point I was making. This wasn't a command from God. God's command was punish the Midianites. Moses is enraged. So even if you go with the completely literal reading, you don't incorporate any hyperbolic language. If it's completely literal, the command was to punish the Midianites. It's Moses who wants them punished more because he's enraged. And so this is not Moses getting a revelation. This is Moses saying, here's how I want to punish them. With that said, if you go with the literal interpretation, the rest of the Bible makes absolutely no sense because the Midianites are still around in massive numbers. And they come in and repeatedly conquer Israel along with their partners, the Amalekites. So yeah, I don't know what to do here. If you give it the reading that Jake insists upon, the text makes absolutely no sense. Now, one thing I didn't get to in my first rebuttal was Jake bringing up that Christianity itself is immoral because Jesus accepts the penalty for our sins, and this would be immoral according to Jake. Well, we got all kinds of problems with this one. He quotes the Quran, no bearer of burden shall bear the burden of another. He says that's just. All kinds of problems there because Muhammad in the Hadith said that on the day of judgment, every Muslim will be given a Jew or a Christian and will be told this is your ransom from the hellfire. Allah will take the sins off of Muslims and put them on the Jews and Christians. Jews and Christians, if you're a Muslim, Jews and Christians will pay the price for your sins in hell. Allah doesn't just let them slide. What's that mean? It means that according to Jake, his religion, God can't just let all this stuff go. There has to be punishment. But notice that verse. No bearer of burden shall bear the burden of another. It doesn't say no one can bear the burden of another. It says no bearer of burden of sin. No bearer of burden shall bear the burden of another. Did Jesus have a burden of sin? Not according to Christianity, not according to Islam. Jesus was sinless. So, as far as my perspective, Jake's religion and my religion agree. Jesus is the one person who could bear the burdens of others. My position is the one person who could bear the burdens of others did. Jake's position is the one person who could bear the burdens of others didn't. I'd say mine's more moral.
Thank you very much for that rebuttal. We'll move into the closings. These will be 5 minutes, and then we'll go into the audience Q&A. And I've got the timer set to Jake.
Okay. Am I audible? You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Thanks, David. Again, I think you thought that you were actually trying to address my arguments, but didn't really do a good job. Much more of the same claims about the Islamic dilemma and a bunch of other nonsense. So let's get to some of the other nonsense. Yeah, you said go watch the debates. Yeah, go watch the debates and you'll see that these guys are in a downward spiral because they can't even actually agree on what the Islamic dilemma is. Michael Jones couldn't tell us in the recent debate what the word judge means in 543 and 547. He doesn't know if it includes legal commands and whether or not Jews and Christians are actually supposed to be following the Quran and Islamic law. Avery said the opposite, and you yourself did too, Dave, but the problem is I absolutely buried both of you in 4K, demonstrating that the Quran does say that Jews and Christians are required to follow the Quran and Islamic law instead of the previous scriptures. And I also did the same thing with Hadith, and you even admitted that you had no response to it. So go watch the debates, go watch the discussions, and you'll see what it is. Now, going back to this hyperbolic language deal with Numbers 31. That doesn't really actually deal with the text, because you're saying, oh, well, now here's the new code. This is only Moses doing this. He wasn't actually commanded by God. But if you look at the beginning of the passage, in the beginning of the chapter, the command is from God. Then, even after the violence is taking place, what do we see? We see that the spoils of the war are getting all broken up, and all of it is in the context of what God commanded. Oh, so conspicuously, we have a few other passages or verses in the middle, which is just Moses being enraged, right? And even if we granted this, what about all of the other genocidal passages in Deuteronomy, in 1 Samuel 15? David still hasn't answered the question. He asked the question. Go back and listen very carefully, folks. He asked the question so he understands the question was asked. He says, how many babies were killed?
Why, SpongeBob?
I can't see his face, but he chuckled to himself.
Leave me alone.
How many babies were killed? He didn't answer the question.
Leave me alone.
He said, oh, I don't know. I don't know how many were killed. Then he went to the cope. Oh, well, this is just talking only about the king's family. Only the king's family was supposed to be killed. Really? Who says this? Only the king's family was supposed to be killed? And also, we're supposed to believe that the king had no babies, no children. What if the king did have babies and children, Dave? Were they to be killed? You don't know. You're damn right you don't know, because you don't want to admit the plain truth about what your scripture actually says. It's not only the king's family that was to be killed. It's very clear and categorical. Now, even if you believe those different categories about old and young, man and woman, child, sheep, donkey, even if you say, oh, no, it wasn't supposed to be a complete obliteration of all these categories, to make the cope that none in the category of baby or infant were supposed to be killed is just laughable. Nobody would read a text this way. And in fact, if it were on the other foot, which we'll see in the next debate, not one of you in the audience, Christians, would accept such an interpretation of the Quran or the authentic Hadith. So we'll test you and see how charitable you are with your interpretations. Now, again, Dave, you said I misquoted. No, you made my point, bro. Don't you get it? You made my point. The mother will be made childless. Why is the mother made childless? Well, if she didn't have any children and there were none to kill, she would already be childless. She's made childless because their children are killed. At least some of them, right? Now, going back to the Glass example, Dave, and I challenge the audience, give a single example where the object of that verb or action is a human and it's meant as verbal seduction rather than just circling around and doing the same thing. Every instance is a matter of a physical movement, not a mere verbal seduction and, flirting with a girl with your tongue. No. Dave, you mentioned about the girl. You said, oh, well, the dad has a choice, but guess who doesn't have a choice? The woman does not have a choice. Oh, the seducer has a choice and the father has a choice, but the girl doesn't. She's forced to marry him and never divorced. I want you guys to think about that. Thank you very much for your careful attention.
We're going to jump into let's give them one round of applause for both of our guests. We're going to jump into the Q&A, and we're going to do it fast.
I thought I get a conclusion.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. You are right.
You working for Jake there?
Hey, James, he really needs the conclusion. Give him extra time.
We're ready for you, Dave.
All right, well, Jake says he buried us on the Islamic dilemma. I just have no clue what planet he lives on. He complains that we formulate the Islamic dilemma differently.
I've seen plenty of power banks over my 15 years of reviewing tech, but this Ridge one quickly became a favorite. So this, a 10,000 milliamp hour battery that's already this small, is pretty clutch, but it's also pretty loaded.
He's right. What you're dealing with is the Quran over and over and over again, like a beating drum, affirming the Torah and the gospel and all the scriptures of the Jews and the Christians. Allah says it. He says no one can change his words. He says he's confirming what we have with us. He says that we have that he's confirming the scriptures that are written down with us. The same scriptures that Jake keeps attacking. I just have to find that interesting. But guys, there is no solution to the Islamic dilemma. Those are the things the Quran says. We can formulate it any way we want. I formulate it in terms of inspiration, preservation, and authority. Others do it differently. Wes Huff just uses one verse. He uses the Quran orders Christians to judge by the gospel. And he says, okay, if I judge by the gospel, I have to judge that Islam is false. If I don't judge by the gospel, then I'm rejecting Allah. So either way, I'm rejecting Allah. So I reject Allah or I reject Allah. Guess what? He's allowed to do that. He's allowed to do that. You can formulate the argument however you want. So in my opening statement, I pointed out how strange it is that the scriptures in the Old Testament are confirmed by both the New Testament and by the Quran, and yet Christians are the ones who try to understand them and defend them, while Muslims attack scriptures that their God and their prophet affirm. Again, welcome to the insanity of Islam. Then I point out that since human beings are created in the image of God, we're created with some amazing abilities, but these amazing abilities allow us to do horrendous evil when we use them to degrade ourselves and others. And sometimes God has to stop us from what we're doing. I went through the final marching orders of the Bible, where we're commanded to love everyone and to live in peace with everyone, as far as it depends on us. And I drew attention to a number of things to keep in mind when we're examining the Bible's commands and teachings that sometimes disturb us. Again, the ancient world was a very disturbing place. Jake, there in his conclusion, says, I haven't answered all the genocidal passages. I think he's missing the point. All of the groups that are said to be completely wiped out. So the Midianites were wiped out. The Canaanites were wiped out. The Amalekites were wiped out. Genocide, complete extermination of the population. They're all around again later in massive numbers. So what's going on there? Well, if your position is that those passages say they're completely wiped out, then the text just makes no sense and the authors are completely insane. So if you don't think the authors are completely insane, which you shouldn't if you're a Muslim whose God and prophet affirm those scriptures, you should try to understand what's going on. There are multiple ways of reconciling the passages, but again, what doesn't work is complete extermination of the populations.
I guess that's fair.
Jake again doesn't understand the passage that Agag's mother would be made childless. This is Samuel talking about Agag's mother, saying, I'm about to kill you, so your mother is about to be childless. Okay, yes, Agag was exterminated according to the story. Other than that, I kind of don't know what to do here. We've got someone who will completely throw his own God and his own prophet under the bus in order to attack the Bible. This is really an excellent illustration of what's going on with the image of God. God gives us abilities to image him, and we use those abilities to attack him, to degrade everyone around us, to degrade ourselves, and so on. And you've got Jake, who's been given an intellect, he's been given reasoning ability. And look at the spiritual component here. There are all sorts of things Jake could do. He chooses to attack the very scriptures that his God and his prophet affirm as the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God. And you can point it out to him, and he'll keep doing it. This is sort of the human predicament that we're in. We're given these abilities, and we use them in a kind of spiritual rebellion. So I would encourage everyone, as I had to.
So what I guess David is saying is that because the people appear later on, then how could it have been a complete genocide? And that the Bible is using hyperbolic language when it describes utterly destroying them, every single one of them, even their donkeys. Which could, I suppose, be attributed likewise to saying today, like, oh, we crushed them, we destroyed them during a football match. I think that's fair.
If you see what your positions and your rebellion is leading to, and that it makes absolutely no sense, and yet you just can't stop, you need to turn to the Lord Jesus Christ and be freed from that spiritual rebellion and let him, a perfectly functioning image of God, transform you as he's done for 2,000 years.
Thank you very much for that closing.
Alert. Biohazardous.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll jump into the Q&A. Folks, if you want to line up just to my left,
proceed with caution.
We'll get into it right now. And then one thing that in an ideal world we would have is alternating questions. So if you do have a question for David, we do want to interweave questions if we can, so it's not 10 questions for Jake and then one for David, or maybe several for David at the end. Does anybody have a question for David? Not a problem, you don't have to, but come on up, we're ready for you.
So this is a question for Jake. Jake, you pretty much made your argument around, can a moral God command the death of the innocents? So I have a question. In both the Quran and in the Bible, Allah, or God, issued that all of the people of Noah and the people of Sodom were to be killed, including the innocents, their children. So why did God kill those people miraculously? And why did, because you also made a case of why would God miraculously save the tribes of the Canaanites that were being slaughtered? So why didn't God miraculously save those children instead of killing them himself? And then also, you know, the other tribes of
Okay, thanks. This is a very common question and response to the argument being made, but I think it misses the entire point. One is a case of God using things like natural disasters and there being collateral damage and people being killed. Another is an instance of God supposedly commanding human beings to, in a very, very evil and immoral fashion, to go and actually hand combat and kill little infants. I don't know if you know what kind of an effect that would have on said soldiers, if you know anything about what happens to many soldiers who come back from war. So I think it's an entirely different situation. And yes, God has control over life and death. But when you start having a religion in which you claim that God is actually commanding people to do this, well, then he can do it later on. And that's what we are worried about today when people go around and claim in the name of religion that God is telling them to kill innocent people. And that's what we should be worried about.
Ready for you.
Hi, Jake. Thank you so much for coming here to debate. I enjoyed your presentation. I wanted to talk about Deuteronomy 22 regarding the marrying a rapist passage. So you talk about the woman having to marry the man, but just a few verses earlier, it describes what I would say is actually rape, and it says that only the man shall be put to death. That's verse 25. And then verse 26 says, but you shall do nothing to another woman. That sounds descriptive of rape, but then it goes on to another thing, that's the one you were talking about. And that says that he has to marry her. So how can he marry her if he's already dead?
Yeah, because there's something that you're missing between the two verses, and it always surprises me how this skips over people's head. The difference is not, one is an example of rape in the earlier passage, and yet the second one that I was focusing on is not. The difference is, in the first example, it's about the status of the woman. The status of the woman in the first example, when she's a victim of rape, is that she was betrothed to be married to somebody. Okay. Whereas in the second one, the status of the woman is that she's not betrothed to be married, and thereby she is forced to be married to the rapist. But as I said, even if you grant for the sake of argument that it's not rape and it's seduction, it's still a case of forced marriage. And David pretty much affirmed that, and we haven't seen a good response.
Ready for Chipper.
Hi, Jake. So in your opening statement, you were critiquing David and his appeal to divine authority. You mentioned, and this is a paraphrase, you said that just because God has the authority to make a command does not necessarily make that command good. And so I wanted to turn that around because you're basically saying there's a moral standard.
Someone's here.
Warning, reinforcements detected. 20 minutes remain.
GG's. Ah! Dang, that was close.
Standard outside of God that Christians need to judge God's commands. And so my question to you is, as a Muslim, should a Muslim judge Allah's commands based off what they think is good? Is there a moral standard outside of Allah?
No, this is a false dichotomy. This goes back to Euthyphro's dilemma and where does goodness or justice and these type of things come from. The assumption is that either it's based upon God's capricious will that is totally arbitrary and that it's not guided by any standard either outside of himself or within himself, or you have a second option, which is that there's this, platonic realm, or that there's this category of goodness outside of God, which God then appeals to. No, God himself is goodness. God himself is justice. God himself is the epitome of what mercy is. And so his divine will is guided by his divine character. It's not a completely arbitrary command. Otherwise, you could say that, well, God could just very easily command idolatry. And the only difference between him commanding idolatry or murder versus caring for the innocent and worshiping God alone is just merely what God decided to will. I don't hold to this idea of, or this understanding of divine command theory. I don't know if David does. He probably doesn't know himself.
Thank you. I'm just holding me. Come on up.
Hi, Jake. Thanks for coming out. I think it's great to hear, points from opposing points of view.
What if you just
one of my main
shove
things
the mic
is,
in their mouth?
let's just say hypothetically that these Amalekite children, these Amalekite babies, well, what if they went to heaven after they died? I mean, God is the judge of the afterlife, so they could be eternally in heaven right now.
I think you were done there. I didn't know if you were pausing.
Yeah, sorry, I'm done. Yeah.
Okay, I can't. You guys have to understand. I can't actually see you, so I'm just going off of the audio. Yeah, so I think this kind of misses the point. This is another thing that William Lane Craig and some other Christian theologians have hypothesized. First of all, there's nothing actually in the text itself that requires that the babies are immediately put into heaven. There's nothing that states that. That's just completely
false.
Conjecture.
Okay, I'm sorry. But not just that's false. That's false because babies are innocent, and at least Eastern Orthodox position holds that we're not under original sin the same way that it's typically believed, that we inherit like a sinful nature, but that doesn't automatically put us under this penalty of death. We don't believe in the penal substitutionary atonement theory that is pushed by most Protestants.
But even if we granted that for the sake of argument, that wouldn't actually deal with the fundamental problem, which is that these babies, prior to going to heaven, supposedly, were actually brutally murdered and killed. And if God is commanding that, you still have that problem. Just saying that, oh, well, after they were brutally murdered, they're going to heaven, that doesn't really soften the blow.
I mean, I think it would soften the blow for me. I mean, if someone, martyred me as a Christian and I'm in heaven, it's like, I guess, I'm wondering if you think that these Amalekite children would be on your side of the debate, even if they were in heaven.
I would think so. I think they would be, they wouldn't be able to talk, but if they're babies and then in the afterlife, God makes them such that they can communicate, I think they would be wondering and saying, well, God, okay, we made it to heaven, but the path to get there really sucked. And why did you command these people to kill us? We could have been, we could have made it to heaven eventually without that, and we could have been orphans and, adopted by people without having to be killed in this way and still make it to heaven. So yeah, I mean, for you, that's fine if you think it softens the blow. For me, and I think many people, that's a bit troubling.
We do need any questions for David. Okay, come on up.
Probably.
Okay, for both of you. Come on up.
I have a different interpretation.
Oh my God, they're everywhere.
My interpretation is like the flood, like Noah, that there was pagans, that they were evil, that they were sacrificing their children, that they were...
If you want to understand how things work, especially these days, this game is for you. You're not just playing, you're actually learning how to build simple...
corrupt, and that God had to flood the earth when it was the days of Noah and Sodom and Gomorrah. I do believe God was just, and I believe that the Old Testament and the New Testament are covenant different. There's a new covenant, and I do believe in God is the God of peace. Now He made a covenant of peace. We are living in that time, but He will reign again, and will be just again, like the sickle, and the blood will be on the sickle, and that His wrath is again. And I do not know eternity, what happened to the babies, but I do know the flood was real, and I believe God's wrath is to be feared.
Maybe David, you want to respond first? You haven't talked in a while.
Ammo crate dropped.
Yeah, a couple things. The Quran says in Surah 16, verse 61, if Allah were to seize mankind for their wrongdoing, He would not leave on the earth a single living creature. So it's just weird. I don't know. I'm just thinking of things like that when Jake is talking about innocence. We're all somehow affected by sin. Also, in the story of the Amalekites, even if you went with the completely literal understanding and ignored everything else in the context and ignored the rest of the book and ignored all the other issues where groups are wiped out and they're still around later, you still, let me On the issue of what happens to the babies, notice the Israelites didn't believe in carrying out that punishment until a prophet ordered them to. So they didn't want that to be a matter that they're deciding. They waited until a prophet ordered them to do that. So if you ignore everything else and you think this is wiping out babies, then it would be God knowing everything that happened before and everything that's going to happen in the future and the eternal destination of everyone there. Anyway, this point is there are all kinds of things that we don't know. The one thing, again, it can't mean is that there was a complete extermination of the population.
Yeah, just very quickly, just because she asked, I think, for both. I mean, I don't want to misrepresent, but how I'm interpreting the question in the way that you said it. I mean, it was more of a statement. It seems that you, and then even David on the back end, when he's answering the question, are, and maybe you're pushing David in that direction to say, well, in actual fact, maybe the babies were evil. Maybe the babies were guilty of sin, if you have a concept of original sin and original guilt being passed from Adam to babies. But I just think that complicates things even more, and that's even more immoral. But yeah, if I misrepresented what your position was, I apologize, but that's how it seemed to me.
Unless there's a quick clarification, otherwise we'll go to the next one.
Yeah, basically, like the flood, I believe that God wiped it out, but yet God spared Abraham, and the baby was ordered to do it. I mean, his ways are higher. The mind of God is so much bigger than mine, so I am not able to comprehend it. But yeah, the question was regarding, I guess, God's wrath is to come, you know, again, as in the flood, I believe, as it was given in the past. And I do believe it was severe, and that we're living in a time of grace. That was just actually the question is it's just different. So I'm asking, you know, I think you answered it. You guys have a different. Sorry.
We'll go to we just to try to get through. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 folks. Is if you can make your question as pithy as possible. And come on over here.
So Jake, quick question for you. If in fact 1 Samuel 15 is hagiographic hyperbole, you would need to see in the text. You would need to see in the text the actual killing of the children taking place to know that it's not. So I'm wondering if you see the actual taking of the children's life in the text anywhere.
I don't think that follows. So in order to interpret the text as any babies, and see, this is the distinction I'm making. I'm already granting that it can be viewed as hyperbolic in a particular sense, but it's not an all or nothing. It's not, oh, this is hyperbolic and no babies were meant to be killed at all, not a single one, and in fact none of them actually were, or all of them were slaughtered and killed and there was none left. That's kind of the option that you're giving or David's giving, and I'm saying no, it's nuanced. Yeah, some people survived, but yeah, when you make those categorical statements and you're naming all different categories of men, women, children, old, young, baby, animals, I think God means what he says there, that he was expecting at least some of them to be attempted to be killed. So yeah, I don't think it's an all or nothing.
One second, I'll give you a chance to respond. I do hear a conversation. If it's okay to have a conversation, and just ask that it's distracting, wherever the conversation is, if you could step out of the room, because I'm just not sure.
Yeah, very rude.
Ready for you.
Yeah, I don't think you understood what I meant. I wasn't claiming an all or nothing. I was claiming if you can find one in the text, or if it is just hagiographic hyperbole.
I mean, again, I think that's a false dichotomy. The assumption is that unless it specifically mentions, oh, Moses went up to a baby and killed him, and it's that explicit language, that we can't be sure that God intended any of the babies to be killed, and that it's just purely hyperbolic. I just don't think that follows.
Well, next question ready for you.
Hi, my name's Farida. Thank you both for doing this debate.
Sweet
my question
Farida.
is for Jake. So in the Quran, it says that no bearer of sins can bear the sins of another. And in both Islam and Christianity, Jesus is sinless. So why is it hard for Muslims to conceive that Jesus died for your sins?
Well, even if I granted that Jesus was sinless, that's not the problem for me. The problem for me is that him being sinless or innocent, we definitely believe he was innocent, both Muslims and Christians. That's something we agree on. Jews, not so much, but that's another story. I think that actually just exacerbates the problem further, because the problem is that typically an innocent person should not be put to death for the sins or the punishment of the guilty. That's what Ezekiel 18 says, and it's riddled all throughout the Old Testament. So I see that as fundamentally immoral for an innocent person to die for the sins of the guilty, even if he wanted to do that himself. That wouldn't be accepted in any court of justice today.
Ready for you?
Hello, my name's Mike, and thank you both. Excellent presentation both. I think, where the focus is on innocent, when the focus really in the passage is God's righteousness, His holiness, and His judgment. How He judged the whole earth in the days of Noah, as the young lady already mentioned, or even the case of Jonah. Jonah's sin affected everyone on that ship. They had to throw off all the cargo and everything, luggage, everything. They suffered great loss. And in the Amalekites were exceedingly wicked people, all kinds of perversion and so forth. So their sin actually affected the judgment affected their children as well. God's holy, holy, holy. It's the only attribute that's mentioned 3 times. He's sovereign, He's good. Actually, He showed mercy to those children. Had they grown up and become exceedingly wicked, they would be in hell. However, as Christians, we believe that if you haven't reached the age of accountability and God takes your life, and I would imagine they were not tortured. They were killed quickly. If it actually did happen, they would, I believe, be in heaven. So that's my comment. I just wondered what Jake and David, if you would respond to that quickly.
Yeah, I don't know if David wants to talk. I can.
Yeah, so basically, in short, when I'm reading the passages, I'm looking at them going, something weird's going on here. If groups are specifically said to be completely wiped out and then they're around later, I think something's going on here. And it's again, it's not just, oh, this passage is troubling, let's say it's hyperbolic. It's the text that is raising these issues. And then apart from this, you see, like in the commands to completely wipe out the Canaanites. Those commands are used interchangeably with commands to drive them off the land. And so what's going on there? It makes it sound like wiping you out is like destroying your attachment to the land or ending your national identity or something like that. We even have it in Exodus where God says, I will wipe them out. I'm going to wipe out the Canaanites. And then you keep reading, and He says, I'm going to drive them off the land little by little. Okay, so wipe out is synonymous with driving them out little by little. And then later in the same passage, he says, you will wipe them out. I mean, you will drive them off the land. So all of these things are interchangeable. Me saying I'm going to wipe all of you out, or I'm going to not leave anything left alive, is very different from, hey, I'm going to make you guys get out of here over time. I'm going to make you guys get out. Those are completely different things to us. The text is using those as interchangeable. And so I'm looking at that going, I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I can look and see what the various suggestions are. But as far as, so I'm not interpreting this as God's ordering killing babies, but they're going to heaven. I mean, you can read it like that. And again, what I pointed out a moment ago is that they didn't do this without the command of a prophet. So the concern would be if you think, well, it's better, and I'm sure Jake would share this concern. If that's your view, and you would think, okay, it's better to kill a baby than have that baby grow up in a bad environment or something like that. Well, we might go out killing babies left and right then. Look at this. This guy is in a troubled household. I would have been killed because I come from a pretty dysfunctional background. I'm sure jihadis would have been happy if I'd have been wiped out. But again, the point there is if that is your interpretation, it doesn't allow us to go around saying, hey, we're going to go wipe out babies because, again, the children of Israel did not do that without a specific command from a prophet on that interpretation.
Jake, we'll give you a chance to respond. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
My parents didn't finish college, and I was the first person to go to college.
Yeah, just very quickly. I think the gentleman seems to be saying that this is basically God's righteous judgment, and he's fully has the authority to be able to do so, and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, you also mentioned about the position of before the age of accountability. I think you should look into this a bit more detail if you see what St. Augustine says about this and the variety of different positions amongst Christian theologians. Not all of them agree with this. Some people think, there's broadly 3 positions. Either they all go to heaven, they all go to hell, or it's God's choice. Even after that, they could be in a state where God decides by His arbitrary will. So, I think that just to say when it's not explicit in the text that, all of the babies are going to heaven and they're going to be with Jesus tomorrow, I think that's wishful thinking. I don't think it's really justified from the text, but I could see why you would want to think that.
Ready for you.
Hi, I just got a quick one. I just wanted to ask this question. So yes or no, but if you want to expand on either position, can a true prophet sin? And that's for both of you.
I believe, yes, a true prophet can sin. I think that David would agree with that too. If you look, that's one of the things that Islam has in terms of problem with the Bible. I know David's going to go back to the Islamic dilemma. He'll have to remind me of that at least 1 or 2 times before this is over. But that's one of the problems that we have. We think that prophets can sin but not commit major sins in the way that committing idolatry and these sorts of things. But I think as a Christian and a Jew, you definitely have to accept that prophets can sin, because all throughout the Old Testament, the prophets commit sin. I mean, David is called a prophet in the book of Acts, and yet he commits many sins, right? So for sure.
Yeah, we'd agree on that. According to Islam and Christianity and Judaism, prophets can and have sinned. You've had a change in view among like Muslims over the centuries, in that, as Jake was pointing out, they believe that prophets would be free of major sin. That wasn't the earliest view. They have a view, Ismat al-Anbiya, which is Allah's protection of the prophets, and early on it meant that Allah will protect a true prophet from persisting in any major sin. So a prophet might commit a major sin, but Allah would take him out of that. And so that was their view on the story with the satanic verses, that Muhammad delivered the satanic verses, and then God brought him out of it. He sent Gabriel to tell him, hey, look what you did. But later, the theology evolved, and it came to be that Allah will protect a prophet from committing any major sin, and that's why that story had to be left out. But the Quran itself tells Muhammad to repent of his sins, so...
Just to keep us on schedule, we should wrap up with that. If it's really short and pithy.
I have a question for David. I think we would agree that that morality is derived from the nature of God. That is, he doesn't have to go outside himself for it, nor is he capricious. However, how does the requirement of payment for sins flow directly from his nature?
Yes, I agree that God is the ultimate foundation for goodness, moral obligations, all of that. But God is a perfect being, and if God's a perfect being, then he's also perfect in his attributes. And so God's justice is perfect, but also his mercy is perfect, his love is perfect. And so if you have a God who is perfect in justice and perfect in love and mercy, human sinners present him with a kind of problem, because justice would be calling for all of us to be punished. Mercy and love would be calling for us to be forgiven. So it's almost like God would have to sacrifice one of his attributes. Now, the solution in Islam is to just diminish God's attributes. He's not that loving. He doesn't love unbelievers. And he can't just sweep some sins under the rug. So he can let some sin slide. And so, I mean, that's the problem of sin. In Christianity, there's something different. It's God's justice is perfect, and therefore, according to Christianity, by the end, all sin has been punished. Every last sin. You either pay for it yourself, or Jesus took the penalty for you. But at the same time, God was loving. His love was perfect, so that he did it himself, so that we could actually be forgiven. So in Islam, you diminish God's attributes so that he can deal with human sin. In Christianity, God's attributes remain perfect.
Any quick gotcha?
Excellent answer.
Thank you very much. That was a fantastic debate. Let's give it one final round of applause. Thank you very much, Jake and David. Oh, there you go. Ready for you. I'll hand it over to Elle.
Thank you very much again for joining us for this debate. We look forward to seeing you shortly for the next one. If you want to find out more about our mission, check out seekandsharetruth.org. We're hoping to train and equip people in apologetics, polemics, and evangelism. And help.
All in all, I think it was a decent debate. It was a lot of Jake hate, but Jake actually, I think, raised a lot of really good points. David had really good counters or rebuttals, especially when he was saying that, some of it could be interpreted as hyperbole, and the fact that there were survivors after the fact. I feel like lends credibility to that statement. I wonder what an Orthodox Christian would say when asked the same questions, though. So I'm curious, maybe next stream I'll look up Muslim versus Orthodox debate, or just Orthodox folks answering these tough questions about Scripture. But it is 4:30, and it's probably time for me to go to bed, skis. I'm just going to sit here, play some music, and go through my inventory before I go to bed. But anyways, thank you guys so much. I love you guys. Keep seeking truth, just like me. That's all I'm trying to do. So, I'm just getting old. Good night.
Just thinking back to all the damage you've done. I don't want to be your friend, your magician or loved one. Don't know if I should, but if I could, I would kick you right out of the car, kick you right out of the country. And if you got hate in your heart, forget me, forget me, forget me right now. As you leave, as you leave, as you leave our town. Forget me, forget me, forget me right now. Can it be, can it be, can it be so bad? I remember you here eating out of my hand. You can be, you can be, you can be sad. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. To this day I'm having dreams of reuniting with you. It's the most annoying thing, I know I'm not supposed to. Don't know if I should, but if I could, I would throw you right out of my thoughts, kick you right out of the country. And if you got hate in your heart, forget me, forget me, forget me right now. As you leave, as you leave, as you leave our town. Forget me, forget me, forget me right now. Can it be, can it be, can it be so bad? I remember you here eating out of my hand. You can be, you can be, you can be sad. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Forget me, forget me, forget me right now. As you leave, as you leave, as you leave our town. Forget me, forget me, forget me right now. Can it be, can it be, can it be so bad? I remember you here eating out of my hand. You can be, you can be, you can be sad. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. 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 I get sick just thinking back to all the damage you've done. I don't want to be your friend, your magician or loved one. Don't know if I should, but if I could, I would kick you right out of the car, kick you right out of the country. And if you got hate in your heart, forget me, forget me, forget me right now. As you leave, as you leave, as you leave our town. Forget me, forget me, forget me right now. Can it be, can it be, can it be so bad? I remember you here eating out of my hand. You can be, you can be, you can be sad. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, enemy, you're a part of me. To this day I'm having dreams of reuniting with you. It's the most annoying thing, forget me right now. Can it be so bad? I remember you here eating out of my hand. You can be sad. Enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, you're a part of me. Enemy, you're a part of me. You're a part of